Well, you don't think we're just going to let you walk out of here, do you?
Who's we, sucker?
Smith, Wesson, and me. Drake 63 here today, and I'm here today to talk a little bit about the idea of carrying a 6-inch 44 Magnum revolver, or any 6-inch revolver for that matter, in a shoulder holster. Like a lot of you watching my love affair with revolvers, my love affair with Smith & Wesson started with this firearm. It started with the Dirty Harry movies. In the Dirty Harry series of movies, really you had two stars. One of them was Clint Eastwood's character, Inspector Harry Callahan, and the other one was his firearm, the 44 Magnum. Now this is a Smith & Wesson model 29-2. It is the same firearm that you see in the movies. The difference is in a lot of the scenes, there's an extra half-inch. It's a 6.5-inch barrel. This is a 6-inch barrel. You'll even see in some of the promos and things like that, they use the 8+inch barrel for effect. This is basically it. This is what he's shooting. And if you recall, Inspector Callahan was using a shoulder holster to carry this around. And I want to talk a little bit about that. I actually went out and purchased a shoulder holster. It is this particular holster is called a Barsa. It is what is known as a vertical shoulder holster. What's the difference between that and horizontal? If you look real close, you'll notice that this holster is vertical. Firearm goes in just like that. And a horizontal, it goes sideways. But we're going to take a look at this holster. I'm going to talk to you about what it's like walking around with this firearm, what it's like trying to conceal it, and we'll talk about how realistic that really would have ever been for a police officer. There's reality, there's Hollywood, and you know, usually they're two different things. Stay tuned. The first thing you're going to notice is that you really can't wear a nice fitting jacket like Harry Callahan did and button it up. So if you'll notice, like myself, the Inspector Callahan character often was wearing a sweater vest, like I am, so that it looked a little bit more natural to have the coat open. Because when you're trying to hide something that has a 6-inch barrel and an overall length that's approaching a foot, that's kind of hard to do. But as you can see, I can kind of conceal that. Now, I don't even want to talk about getting in a foot chase with somebody and all the different things you can do, or trying to get into some kind of a fist fight and having this on you. But I'm going to show you how this works. I've kind of got it properly fitted as much as I can. The Barsa holster is not the top of the line that's out there. This is something you can get for about 70 bucks. Seems to be decent quality, but there you go. The first thing I want to show you is you can see right here, there's a need to pretty much hide all this under your arm, or if you wear it any other way, it's going to completely poke out through your clothes and print, which kind of defeats the purpose. But you've got a shoulder holster here, or shoulder strap here, you've got a counterbalance, and then these tie down to your belt on both sides, okay? And then if you look real closely at the back, you can see that you've got straps that you adjust there as well. And to wear this properly, you really need it tightened down pretty good. But as you can see, I've got to pretty much maintain this under my arm to keep it from printing. The other thing is this has a snap down on it that I've got open at the moment, but at least for me, this is really hard to get to. And as you can see, it obviously wasn't the easiest thing for Clint Eastwood to do either. And if you notice from that scene I mimicked, he's slowly taking this firearm out and producing it in front of a couple armed guys, and then having his way with them. They just freeze and watch and wait to get shot. I don't think that's very realistic at all. I think the second he would have reached in, he probably would have had a shotgun blast to the chest and a couple shots to the head, to be honest. This is not a quick draw situation at all. Where I could see something like this coming into play would be if, for example, if you were interested in, taking this hunting, something like that. Great, you've got it with you. But in terms of practicality, wearing this every day as a plainclothes detective, wow, I don't see how that would be something that somebody would choose. And for that reason, given that there's not a lot of sidearm possibilities that you're going to have with a 6-inch holster, it's kind of hard to believe that someone would actually pick this. Now, you could do a lot of different things. If you're enamored with the idea of carrying a 44, you can always carry a 4-inch version. And actually, when the movie Dirty Harry was being conceived and they were beginning to film, what they wanted to use was a nickel-plated 4-inch model of the 29. Rumor has it that there wasn't one available on set or nearby from the prop company. I don't know what the story was, but that being the case, they didn't go with the 4-inch, and then they kind of went with this, which again is more of a cowboy kind of look. And I think that that's why you saw this in the movie. I think for dramatic effect, as opposed to practicality, for sure. And then, getting this reholstered, holy cow, it's a chore. Not that that's something you do a lot, but, could I get used to carrying this around? Whew, I don't know. I mean, this isn't loaded, obviously. So you add the weight of 6 44 cartridges and a couple speed loaders. You're talking about quite a bit of gear to carry around for 6 shots at a time. I don't believe the 44 Magnum does anything in terms of a police type scenario, a self-defense scenario, a stopping the bad guy scenario. I don't believe the 44 does anything that the 357 won't. So there is that. But I guess, there's always the whole thing about if you run into a bear. I get that. For police, certainly the ability to penetrate, maybe even immobilize a vehicle, 44's got some advantages. For personal defense, civilian defense like us, we're never going to be in a legal situation where we can be shooting at moving cars and through the engine blocks and things like that. So there is that to consider. But this holster is, I got this as a novelty. I never had the intention of, hey, I'm going to carry this around. I thought it'd be fun to just have this, like I said, as a novelty. And it does work well with my other 6-inch 357s, which I have several of those. So from that standpoint, it's pretty cool. But would a police officer benefit by running around with a 44 Magnum versus other calibers? That's a good question. So instead of going through the discomfort of carrying a 6-inch 44 Magnum and all of this assorted trapeze harness type equipment that you see with a shoulder holster, there's a good chance back in the early 70s you just might have seen something more like this, a simple basket weave belt holster with a 4-inch combat type Magnum and 357. Here's a Colt Trooper Mark III. Let's see what that looks like with my somewhat dress-up plainclothes ensemble. Now here I'm wearing the same outfit that I was before. Sweater vest, shirt, got a jacket. And you can probably see that I've got something here on the belt, but what I've really got here is a lot of mobility and flexibility with my arms, driving a car. Again, if I had to get involved in some kind of altercation or just grabbing a cup of coffee. But here's the big difference. Remember how long it took me to reach in and pull that big sucker out? Well, here's what we're looking at here. Just like that. And I'm on it. Okay. And then in terms of reholstering, there you go. So, you know, what's a more realistic scenario? Easier to have mobility with everything. Here you have a 357. It's 6 rounds, just like that Model 29. It's 4-inch barrel, so all the human stopping power that you need, all the penetration that you're typically going to need, especially for a plainclothes detective, not a member of a SWAT team, you've got it. So I'd have to say, just in terms of how quick you can get a firearm on target and everything else, there's really no comparison. And that's why you saw things like Colt Troopers, things like the Smith & Wesson Model 66s, the 586s, the 19s, others in 4 inches, were the firearm of choice back in the 70s up through the 80s, even the 90s, before the polymer revolution kicked in. So just an interesting comparison to make on what's probably realistic. So the fact of the matter is, back in the early 70s, you probably wouldn't see a police officer walking around with a shoulder-holstered 6-inch 44 Magnum. And as I said, chances are it probably would have been something more along the line of a 4-inch 357 Combat Magnum like this Colt Trooper. Might be something more along the lines of a Smith & Wesson. Here's a 586. Or, especially with a plainclothesman, chances are it just could have been a 38 like this Model 10. But whatever the case may be, nothing was more exciting than using something like a 44 Magnum just for its brute power, the way that it showed when you pulled it from the holster and everything else. It had that John Wayne kind of Western kind of thing. And that's where Clint Eastwood had come from prior to the Dirty Harry movies. As you remember, he was a Western star for the most part. So regardless of what type of firearm was used, it's nice to think about shoulder holsters. It's nice to think about big long barrels and all those things for a city cop in the early 70s in San Francisco. Chances are it's probably something a lot more plain Jane. I know what you're thinking. Did he fire 6 shots or only 5? Well, to tell you the truth, in all this confusion, I kind of lost track myself. But being this is a 44 Magnum, the most powerful handgun in the world, and will blow your head clean off, you have to ask yourself a question. Do you feel lucky? Well, do you, punk?